Good morning and welcome to the first annual Regional Initiative for Cybersecurity Education and Training. My name is Randy Pistana and I will be serving as your Master of Ceremonies for today's proceedings. We're extremely excited to build and strengthen a foundation in cybersecurity education, training, and workforce in the Americas. Next slide, please. We have a fantastic lineup of thought leaders from across the Western Hemisphere to not just admire the cybersecurity problems that are facing us, but highlight the best practices and solutions to build a stronger and more secure region. Now, before we kick off with the program, we have some information that will help you navigate through today's conference. We're excited to be providing simultaneous translations into English, Spanish, and Portuguese. I do want to direct you to the interpretation tab at the bottom of your page, where you'll be able to change the setting to your preferred language. In addition, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A tab. This is where you'll be able to ask your questions directly to all of the speakers during their respective sections. Next slide, please. I do want to note as we begin that those opinions expressed throughout the presentation do not necessarily reflect those of Florida International University, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, or the General Secretariat of Organization of American States or its member states. Next slide, please. I do encourage you to be as interactive as possible, not just in the Q&A portion of the session, but through social media by visiting any of our co-hosts at Gordon Institute, at OAI Cyber, and at NIST Cyber. Be sure to use the hashtag RICET2021 so we can follow along with you as well. Also important to note that this session is being recorded and we will have the conference recording uploaded to our YouTube page in the near future. I do want to take the time to wish our partners in Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico, and Chile an early happy Independence Day. You'll be celebrating your Independence Day across the region over the next few days, and we're excited to join you in that celebration. Next slide, please. So without much further ado, let's get this show on the road. Our first speaker delivering welcome remarks is Mr. Brian Fonseca. Brian is the director of the Jack D. Gordon Institute for Public Policy and an adjunct professor in the Department of Politics and International Relations at FIU. He is at the Stephen J. Green School of International Public Affairs, but also serves as the founding executive director of cybersecurity at FIU, FIU's university-wide interdisciplinary emerging preeminent program. So Brian, with that, I turn it to you.
Thanks, Randy. Bienvenidos a todos. My name is Brian Fonseca, and it's a privilege and honor to join you all today to help kick off the first annual conference dedicated to deepening and expanding the cybersecurity knowledge across the Americas. Randy, I want to thank you and, of course, the whole team behind the scenes making today possible. You guys have put a tremendous amount of work into pulling this program together, and we're really excited and delighted to see it take off. I want to thank the Organization of American States for the continued partnership, not just on RICET, but also for the deep, long-lasting partnership that we've had with the OAS in promoting cyber education across the Western Hemisphere. The OAS has been a critical partner to Florida International University, and a lot of our professional executive program centers around the partnership that we have with the Organization of American States. And so the team at the Organization of American States, thank you so much for the continued partnership. And again, look forward to continuing to deepen and expand our work across the Americas. I also want to thank Rodney, Petersen, and the rest of the NIST team for allowing FIU to sort of expand our partnership in the National Initiative for Cyber Education. Our partnership with New America to lead the annual National Initiative for Cyber Education Conference and Expo has been a privilege for our institution and for our team. And so we're grateful for the opportunities that Rodney and the NIST team have allowed us and continuing to expand cyber education across the country. And now, again, for their partnership in supporting our efforts to expand that sort of conceptually across the Americas. And finally, I want to recognize the over 1,400 registered attendees that took time to either join us here or on our streaming platforms, and those that will eventually watch the program in the aftermath of today's session. It's because of your interest and commitment to advancing the cybersecurity resilience in the Western Hemisphere that this conference was made possible. As Randy indicated in the opening, we have a fantastic group of experts and thought leaders today. but I want to, I would like to highlight some topics that I know we'll hear about throughout the rest of the program. First, it's important to recognize the full cybersecurity life cycle. There is no one-size-fits-all model that companies can take to build their cybersecurity workforces. Therefore, we need a combination of short-term solutions paired with general change in the way we see and promote cybersecurity in order to bolster and strengthen the cybersecurity workforce of the future. It's important that we advance these discussions around cybersecurity as a career option, similar to that of a lawyer or a doctor. And in that vein, it's critical that countries focus on career discovery as a key pillar to their cybersecurity strategies. There's probably no more consequential work in building sort of the resilience against insecurity in our communities than strengthening the cybersecurity workforce, not just in our country, in the US, in your country, across the Americas, but it's a global phenomenon. Surveys continue to reinforce the fact that there is a gap between the number of people available to fill cybersecurity jobs and the cybersecurity jobs that need staff. Here in the United States, we probably average around 500,000 total cybersecurity vacancies that are unfilled. And it's largely as a result of the sort of slow response that institutions have, particularly educational institutions, in spinning that talent out. So we need to think differently. And it's not just a US problem, it's a hemispheric problem. And so we need to think sort of together collectively on how we can address that shortage. And of course, that cybersecurity workforce doesn't just start in sort of higher ed, where we're at, but it also starts down in the K through 12 space. And so in the US here, we're focused on developing and further advancing our cyber education to K through 12 spaces to ensure that primary and secondary institutions are receiving the necessary cyber education to build and change culture within those growing up that we hope in many cases will take on technology jobs. Second, and in similar vein, we must build diversity and inclusivity in our cybersecurity workforce and our cybersecurity practices. We must think of diversity not just in the context of gender and background, but also in the context of diversity of thought. The interdisciplinarity nature of cybersecurity today demands the convergence of a variety of different types of thinkers that converge on the cybersecurity issue. While reaching out to those outside of the traditional pathways, I meant to say this means bringing in those from underrepresented and underrepresented academic backgrounds, while simultaneously reaching out to the non-traditional, non-technical folks that we can rope into the workforce. So I look forward to moderating a panel later this morning or later today, looking at the neurodiversity and how we're missing out on a great workforce candidates by thinking too narrowly as to what makes up a cybersecurity professional. Another great example is what we're doing at FIU in the reskilling, upskilling space. As I referenced earlier, in partnership with the OAS, FIU launched its first cybersecurity professional education program called the Cybersecurity Leadership and Strategy Professional Certificate several years ago, again, in partnership with the OAS, focused on providing cybersecurity fundamentals and helping train individuals on how organizations can build cybersecurity strategies to protect their organizations from the emerging cybersecurity threat landscape. This program is expanded, and now it includes courses in artificial intelligence and governance, cyber threat intelligence and analysis, and social media intelligence and analysis, among other things. We also launched, as part of a 10-institution consortium sponsored by the NSA, a Veterans and First Responders Training Initiative. This program takes transitioning military and veterans and provides foundational cybersecurity training skills that increase their prospects of gaining employment in the cybersecurity workforce. This effort was in combination with other state universities in Florida, like the University of West Florida, and with support of Cyber Florida, which is a Florida-wide cybersecurity educational and research center. And so our programming, particularly in the upskilling and reskilling as it relates to first responders, comes at no cost to the students and has been underwritten by sponsors in the federal government. Third, we must do a better job at linking the cybersecurity workforce gap to national security. The fact that countries cannot fill their cybersecurity workforce needs to put them at risk against state and non-state actors seeking to harm us. In a speech following a string of cybersecurity attacks on American infrastructure, CISA Director Jen Easterly highlighted the need to be innovative about how we inform, educate, and really inspire the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. And I think that quote should resonate strongly with those in the audience today and drive and underlie a lot of our discussion that we'll have in the coming hours. Finally, but certainly not least, we need to anticipate the next cybersecurity threat landscape and the sort of emerging challenges that are facing our hemisphere. The advancement of artificial intelligence and the increased connectivity through the Internet of Things, and notwithstanding, of course, the fact that COVID-19 has thrusted us all into the virtual space in more meaningful ways, but that sort of, and these challenges didn't exist a decade ago. The speed of technological innovation and sort of the emerging threat landscape is far outpacing our ability to counter those cybersecurity threats. Therefore, the workforce of tomorrow cannot be limited to understanding the vulnerabilities today, but we have to look towards the future to better assess sort of the trajectory and evolution of those threats in order to better sort of mitigate and get in front of those. There are many considerations, but I hope today's conference is an opportunity to advance the discussion across the hemisphere and allow us to build necessary resilience to grow together. Again, thank you all for the opportunity to allow FIU to host this for you. Randy, team here at home, thank you so much for all of the work that's gone into pulling this together. And so with that, enjoy today's conference. And again, thanks for joining. Randy, I kick it back over to you.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate the kind remarks to welcome everyone. I do want to note that the translation issues with Portuguese has been solved. So if you are trying to hit the interpretation tab for Portuguese, that is now fixed. Our next speaker should be no stranger to most of you on today's session. Mr. Rodney Petersen is the Director of the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, or NIST, at the National Institute for Standards and Technology in the U.S. Department of Commerce. He previously served as the Managing Director at the EDUCAUSE Washington office and Senior Government Relations Officer. He founded and directed the EDUCAUSE Cybersecurity Initiative and was the lead staff liaison for the Higher Education Information Security Council. With that said, Rodney, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Randy, and thank you, Brian, for your opening remarks. And likewise, NICE appreciates our partnership with Florida International University. And we're very happy to be here today, along with the Organization of American States, for this regional focus on cybersecurity education and training. I send you greetings and welcome on behalf of the entire United States federal government, who is working tirelessly to not only address the cybersecurity education, training, and workforce needs of the US, but those who are in the Americas, as well as those across the globe. So thank you again for your participation, and thank you to FIU and others for organizing today's event. Next slide, please. In the event you're not familiar with NICE or haven't focused on our mission, I did want to share with you a few things about it, because I think it's relevant to think not only of what our 12-year history has been in the US, but perhaps a precedent for others to think about as they approach cybersecurity education and training and workforce for their particular population. So our mission is to energize, promote, and coordinate a robust community working together to advance an integrated ecosystem of cybersecurity education, training, and workforce development. And I want to just kind of focus for a moment on a few different elements of that. The notion of coordination is really important. In fact, earlier this morning, I had a meeting with the new National Cyber Director in the White House, and we were talking about the various roles of both federal departments and agencies, but even those in academia and industry, who all play a significant role in the work we're doing in the United States and abroad. And yet somebody needs to help coordinate or make sure we're doing the appropriate information sharing and alignment. And that's something that our office, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, has been assigned responsibility for by our United States Congress through a law in 2014. And yet the role in coordination and facilitation is really making sure we bring all of the stakeholders together. And so that's kind of the second thing, is it's not just something the federal government does or our very small program office at NICE, but it's the community. And often we hear from people wanting to know, well, how do I become a member, or how do I become a partner? And really both grasping this mission statement and our vision very much talks about national security, as Brian described, as well as economic security, which is near and dear to the Department of Commerce. But there is a vast community, again, in the government, which not only includes the federal government, but in the US would include our state, local, tribal territories. And then it also includes academia, K-12 education, community colleges, universities, and training and certification providers, along with the employers in both the private and public sector. So it's a very broad, vast community. And the real focus is to try to, as much as possible, integrate the ecosystem, because there's no shortage of initiatives and activities and innovation that's occurring across the country and across organizations. But we try to, as much as possible, make sure we're working not only towards that common vision, but that our approaches and our innovations are working together to create a system that has the maximum effect. So in the next slide, you'll see the strategic goals that are in our strategic plan. And I did want to just spend a few minutes focusing on each of them. And I know Brian really hit right in our center here, career discovery, which is our first goal, because we need to promote cybersecurity as a career option, not only to young people, to youth, but to adults and working adults for whom cybersecurity may be something that's new to them. And later, when I talk about our conference for next year, you'll notice our theme is to demystify cybersecurity, because cybersecurity in and of itself is not self-explanatory. So we really want to focus on how to not only increase awareness of cybersecurity careers, but make them more discoverable. And that might start by simple things such as making sure we recognize multiple pathways to a career in cybersecurity. It's not just a student in high school that goes to the workplace or a college graduate, but it could be somebody who enters a cybersecurity career as an apprentice, or somebody who maybe is an IT worker, has an existing job, and they want to, as Brian described, be reskilled or transition into a cybersecurity career. It could be a veteran of the military, or it could be an unemployed or underemployed worker who wants to enter cybersecurity. So making sure that those multiple pathways are both clear and visible is a big part of this overall goal. Also, in recognizing that much like NICE is around for a dozen years, and many of our programs maybe for a little over 2 decades, most of the generation that's in the workforce now, certainly the baby boomers, as we call them, or those maybe about to retire, did not grow up with cybersecurity, both as a word, let alone a career option. So we don't have the parents, the grandparents, the aunts and uncles, and even the teachers and the faculty who can adequately describe cybersecurity as a career option. So we need to make sure we empower those that are in positions of influence to both accurately describe and appropriately motivate people to pursue that as a career. And then next, moving a little bit to the left there, is to transform the learning process. You know, I think the pandemic has actually been a really good opportunity from a learning perspective to see what's possible, not only in terms of online education, but learning from a distance and learning via online tools and techniques. And I think the notion of transforming the learning process starts with hands-on learning experiences. So it's not just classroom or textbook learning, but where people are actually doing and developing skills in kind of either work-based learning environments or real-world scenarios. And then secondly, that we assess that performance based on the skills that they can demonstrate, not just based upon the knowledge or things that they can memorize. Another aspect of that learning process addresses a future where we can create a system of learning and employment records where there's a portfolio that follows an individual, certainly from their student days, but on through their workplace, to document achievements and what they learn and the skills they develop along the way. So we can increase communication between employers as well as with the education and training providers. So a lot of opportunities to transform learning. Thirdly is the goal to modernize the talent management system, because many of us are operating with an HR system that was developed decades ago in a very different time and era, certainly without cybersecurity in mind, and maybe even without IT in mind. So transforming or modernizing those talent management systems to more effectively hire and recruit, hire based on competencies and skills, not just degrees and certifications, but making sure the entire ecosystem is aligned to make sure employers can find the talent that they need, and that education and training providers are producing the talent that is needed by that public and private sector workforce employers. On the far left, you'll see a goal related to increasing use and awareness of the NICE framework. And a little bit later today, you'll hear from Karen Wetzel, the manager of the NICE framework. So I'm not going to say too much about it right now, other than back to that point about an integrated ecosystem. Perhaps the best way we can create a common vision and an ecosystem that begins to work together is by standardizing the vocabulary or the taxonomy or the building blocks, as Karen will describe, that we use to develop a cybersecurity workforce. But it's not enough just to create the standards or the publications. We have to start getting organizations to use it and to demonstrate its usefulness, and quite frankly, to provide feedback to us at NIST on what needs to be changed or improved upon. So empowering others to use and adapt and align to the NICE framework is a very important underlying goal of NICE overall. And then finally, the goal with respect to driving research, it's not enough just to create a lot of programs and activities, and quite frankly, a lot of activity that may not make impact, but we need to conduct research and really elevate those things that are proven to be effective and use evidence to guide our decisions, our priorities, and to make sure that we're not only teaching the right kinds of things, which Brian laid out very nicely, but we're doing it in ways that are effective and that really have maximum impact. Next slide, please. So I want to just end by amplifying a few of our programs or efforts or events really intended to drill down and highlight some of our priorities, starting with cybersecurity career awareness. So NICE has devoted a week for the past 5 years. This will be our 5th year for cybersecurity career awareness. As you see in the slide this year, it's the 3rd week in October 18th through 23rd. On an annual basis, it will be that week. And the focus is not just one for the United States, but one that we invite others across the world to partner with us on. We are working with other countries who want to take this week during Cybersecurity Awareness Month to really drill down and focus on cybersecurity careers. And again, not something that just NIST is organizing or doing, but we are seeing partners in academia and industry as well who are wanting to both have events during that week, but look at ways to really highlight careers in cybersecurity, as well as raise awareness to both youth as well as working adults. So this week, which will be held in the 3rd week of October, is one that we invite you to both attend or participate in and share the word about, but also to certainly contribute. There's a way for you to identify or contribute the programs that you might be holding during that week. So again, a link at the bottom to the website where you can find more information. Next slide, please. As Brian indicated, working with young people at elementary, middle, and high school is increasingly important for the future pipeline, not only of colleges and universities who need students to be enrolled and study cybersecurity, but for the workforce as well. And whether they go on to a higher education or go directly from school to an employment opportunity or an apprenticeship, we recognize the need to really address capacity building across our K through 12 ecosystem. So one way we do that is through a K through 12 community of interest, where people who want to support and contribute to that agenda can join and talk to others who are similarly minded and have similar programs and initiatives in place for information sharing. But then we also bring everybody together through this annual NICE K-12 Cybersecurity Education Conference, which is annually held in December this year on December 6th and 7th, and it will be held virtually again this year. But a great opportunity for us to not only support the role that teachers and educators play, but the surrounding ecosystem of nonprofit organizations, government organizations, higher education institutions, state governments, and many other who play a supportive role, increasing both access and outcomes related to K-12 cybersecurity education. Next slide, please. A critical part of our relationship with FIU is the annual NICE Conference and Expo, which will be held next in June 6th through 8th in Atlanta, Georgia. And I did want to just draw to your attention what I mentioned earlier is that our theme this year is demystifying cybersecurity careers. And our call for proposals is now open. You can go to the website there below and also click on proposals, and you can read more about the conference. And eventually you can register and participate both in the pre-conference seminars as well as the event itself. But again, this is an annual opportunity to bring together that entire ecosystem that I talked about earlier, ranging from employers in the public and private sector to education, training, certification providers, as well as those who are actually learners, whether they be a student or a job seeker or somebody who's working for an employer and for whom the content of developing this ecosystem of cybersecurity education, training, and workforce development is very important. So I encourage you to consider joining us in Atlanta next summer, June 6th through 8th. And then finally, the next slide will focus a little more on what's coming up next. So if you have tracked the NICE conference in the past, you know it's been held annually in November. And last year it was virtual. This year we will have a half-day virtual symposium as well. But the shift to the summer is a strategic move on our part to kind of spread out the K-12 conference, Career Awareness Week, and to try to work around the many other events that are happening throughout the year. And this year's symposium is also very strategic for both NIST and NICE, because as you see, the topic here is a coordinated approach to supply chain risk. And if you're tracking what's happening in the US as well as elsewhere, the issue of supply chain cybersecurity is front and center. You know, our reliance on critical infrastructures, our reliance on software and products and services, including hardware developed by third party, puts us at risk. And so this particular symposium will not only focus on those topics and the various executive orders and laws and efforts that are happening in the US and elsewhere to address supply chain risk, it'll drill down more specifically into what are the implications for education, training, and workforce development. So for example, many discussions ongoing about what do we do with the incumbent workforce who's not going to go back and get another degree or another education, but they need to be trained and they need to be perhaps upskilled with respect to what it means to do these kinds of activities securely in their workplace. It also does have implication, though, for education in the future, for example, of software development, to make sure that we're building in security by design, not only in software development, but artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and other products and services that are being devised. And then, of course, what are the workforce implications for all of this? How do we add to the effort, mostly related to technology and process, if you're familiar with that kind of triad, but getting to the people part, what are the real people implications? Again, the training, the workforce, the education implications of making sure that our supply chain is secure. So I invite you to register for that. Our Secretary of Commerce will provide opening remarks. We have a fireside chat with several government officials, and then a couple panel discussions that will represent views from academia, industry, and government, talking about both the challenges, but the opportunities, and of course, the solutions. Final slide, please. So if you want more information, here's a variety of ways that you can learn more about NICE, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. You can follow and track our work on social media. And certainly if you have questions or input that you would like to provide, an email address is provided there. And again, we welcome your participation both today, both at the other events I mentioned, and quite frankly, throughout the year, as we work together as part of this common community trying to address cybersecurity education, training, and workforce development. So thank you for your time and thank you for your participation.
Thank you so much, Rodney. I appreciate the kind remarks. I also want to note if you're interested in learning more about not just what NICE is doing, but the larger community, NICE holds monthly Community Coordinating Council meetings, and that will update on all the conference activities, events, a lot of things that are virtual that you can join if you're interested in seeing what's going on across U.S. government and the larger global community. So finally, but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce our last welcome speaker, Ambassador Nestor Mendez. Ambassador Mendez is the 9th Assistant Secretary General of the Organization of American States. He assumed office on July 13, 2015, and on March 20th, 2020, was unanimously reelected by the General Assembly to serve a second 5-year term. As Secretary to the Permanent Council and its subsidiary bodies, Ambassador Mendez is central to its deliberations and the core work of the General Secretariat. Ambassador, gracias por estar con nosotros hoy. It's all yours.
Muy buenos días a todos y todas. Señor Rodney Petersen, director de la Iniciativa Nacional para la Educación en Ciberseguridad en el Instituto Nacional de Estándares y Tecnología del Departamento de Comercio de Estados Unidos. Señor Brian Fonseca, director del Instituto Jack D. Gordon de Políticas Públicas de la Escuela de Asuntos Internacionales y Públicos Stephen G. Green, Universidad Internacional de Florida. Comité organizador de RICET, panelistas e invitados. Good morning y buenos días a todas y todos. Es para mí un placer acompañarlos esta mañana en nombre de la Secretaría General de la Organización de los Estados Americanos para extenderles la más cordial bienvenida a la primera conferencia de la Iniciativa Regional para la Educación y Capacitación en Ciberseguridad en las Américas. Un esfuerzo colaborativo realizado por nuestra organización, la OEA, la Universidad Internacional de Florida y la Iniciativa Regional de Educación en Ciberseguridad. Es un honor también promover este trabajo tan importante para seguir potenciando el desarrollo y la implementación de políticas públicas y privadas que fomenten el desarrollo y el incremento de la fuerza laboral en materia de ciberseguridad, a fin de crear soluciones educativas en un momento tan importante como el que vivimos. Actualmente, el daño financiero causado por el ciberdelito en América Latina y el Caribe representa una pérdida de más de 90.000 millones de dólares por año, lo que equivale a 1.6% del PIB de la región y 9.5% del costo actual del ciberdelito en el mundo, de acuerdo con el informe publicado por la OEA y el Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo en el 2020. El costo de los ataques cibernéticos para nuestra región es cada vez más alto, por lo que una preparación adecuada y el cierre de la brecha de la fuerza laboral a través de la educación es indispensable para garantizar la seguridad multidimensional de los ciudadanos de las Américas. Desde la OEA, continuamos buscando maneras articuladas para apoyar y fortalecer los esfuerzos de nuestros Estados miembros y sus ciudadanos para mitigar el impacto del ciberdelito. Ladies and gentlemen, it is imperative that we take immediate action to train and educate the next generation of cybersecurity professionals to be at the vanguard of preparing for, identifying, and deftly tackling cybersecurity risks across all sectors. Over the course of the past year and a half, the OS and its member states have developed an array of educational initiatives, such as the newly launched publication, Cybersecurity Education, Planning for the Future Through Workforce Development, which provides policymakers with a detailed plan to develop a cybersecurity curriculum, offering educational opportunities in cybersecurity at all levels. Similarly, last year, the OS and Cisco launched 2 exclusive digital courses, which certified 1,500 professionals in cybersecurity fundamentals. Additionally, just last month, we gathered more than 50 policymakers from Latin America and the Caribbean to discuss with the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education and Amazon Web Services successful activities being developed in the region and how they can serve as an example for other countries as we continue our pursuit of a safer, more inclusive cyberspace. The above notwithstanding, and considering the reality of new and emerging challenges, we cannot rest quietly. This quest requires us to be vigilant, fully prepared to act, and to be not merely responsive, but to be timely in doing so. We must be innovative in dispensing training to our workforce and to our ambitious students so that the manpower, the capacity, and the readiness will be available to fill the jobs of the future aimed at identifying, diminishing, and eventually eliminating the most pressing cybersecurity threats. RICET, the Regional Initiative for Cybersecurity Education and Training, was established with the clear objective of filling the need for more professionals in the field of cybersecurity, and with the fundamental goal of offering to policymakers, private institutions, civil society, and the public training, engagement, insight, and templates for best practices on the creation and enhancement of educational opportunities around cybersecurity. A central factor in the success of the cybersecurity-related work of the SICTE Secretariat to date has been its broad network of partners and collaborators, which includes relevant national authorities in OAS member states, regional and international governmental and non-governmental organizations, as well as key stakeholders in the private sector, civil society, and academia. This approach highlights the recognition that the cybersecurity ecosystem is so interwoven that it behooves us all to maximize the reach and impact of our resources and to coalesce around opportunities such as today's to facilitate a safer cyberspace for everyone. Para concluir, quisiera reiterar que para la OEA es un gran honor impulsar y apoyar iniciativas en materia de ciberseguridad y educación, y que es de nuestro mayor interés continuar apoyando a los gobiernos, organizaciones y ciudadanos de las Américas en el diseño y puesta en marcha de nuevas iniciativas. Estoy convencido, como lo está la OEA, de que este evento será de gran provecho para todos los gobiernos de nuestra región y servirá para continuar con el fortalecimiento de las capacidades cibernéticas. Asimismo, quisiera extender nuestro profundo agradecimiento a la Universidad Internacional de Florida y la Iniciativa Nacional para la Educación en Seguridad Cibernética por aunar esfuerzos con nosotros y por su continuo apoyo para el desarrollo de estas iniciativas. También permítanme agradecer y reconocer a nuestros ponentes el día de hoy, especialistas e invitados que nos acompañan en este evento regional tan importante. Ladies and gentlemen, the OAS is proud to be an ally in the war against all threats to cybersecurity and an active proponent of cybersecurity education and training in fostering greater security and expanded knowledge that benefits all citizens of the Americas. Les deseo muchísimos éxitos en este evento tan importante el día de hoy. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Mendez. Appreciate your remarks today.